Hello, friends, and welcome to UA Legends, the podcast where each episode shines a spotlight on a hidden gem of the user acquisition world. I'll be your host, Adam, and together with my guests, we're going to deep dive into the wonderful world of user acquisition. We're going to tackle pressing industry topics and discuss the secrets behind my guests' successes. Please don't forget to follow us on AppsFlyer's YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple, or Amazon podcast channels. Okay, that's enough from me. Let's get on with it. Hello, Piyush.
Hey, Adam. How's it going?
I'm very good. Thank you for joining me on my new podcast without you. Well, it's with you now, obviously.
I mean, I feel bad, but then you got me as the first guest, and I don't know if it's going to release, but yeah.
I don't know whether you'll be the first guest, to be fair, but you know.
I mean, I was just trying to be polite here. Or you should have been polite, but that's fine.
It's lovely to see you again, though.
Lovely to see you again. Lovely to get back to lovely to get back to the recording session. It's been a while. It's been more than a year now.
Okay, so I tell you what, for anyone who doesn't listen to our original podcast, which is still going, by the way, this is just a sort of side hustle. Tell us about yourself. How did you get into UA? What's your work history? Come on, interview situation. Let's go.
So I started my career at a company called Music. I started in data analytics originally. But in 1 year, I was like, I don't want to do this end to end, especially because I was working for a pharma client. So it was really somewhat difficult to sort of work in that space. And it was very, again, back in India, there's a lot of work. People do a lot of work. They go crazy hours.
But that was on the user acquisition side or purely data?
No, this was purely data. That's when I started using ClickSense, Tableau, R, and SQL and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, this was... SQL. This was literally like 10 years ago now. So that's when I started in 2014.
Nice. So what, you were actually building SQL queries?
I was, but now I don't know anything. Just to be absolutely clear, I don't remember anything. But yeah, I started there, but in 1 year I sort of switched to...
you realize if somebody from Product Madness Data Science is listening now, they're going to suddenly sort of start making you...
They know that I don't know
build your own queries.
They know that I don't know it very well because I keep on asking them for queries. But, from there on, I sort of switched to InMobi, which is when I entered UA. So I started there as a campaign manager. And to be very honest, I think that's where I learned the basics of UA and performance marketing because my clients were Uber, Facebook, Pandora, Hulu. All of these clients were pretty big and they're based out of US. And,
this was like agency?
No, InMobi was an ad network back then. Okay. I think now they're a DSP and an exchange. Back then it was an ad network. And they were doing pretty well especially because they were very big in a couple of markets, including China, where Google and Facebook was not there, right? So we had a lot of budget when it comes from bigger clients, and they were all trying to expand at that point. They had VC money back then. It was a growing market across the board. So we were pretty big around that time. And, that's when I started learning the basics of what a click is, what an impression is, how do you measure, what is exactly the data that you're receiving, how do you optimize at a campaign level, all the contextual data points, all the user level data that you get. I was working with product, for example, on second price auction and first price auction and stuff like that. So I got a lot of learning in that place, to be very honest. All the basics were covered, from understanding of how bidding works and stuff like that. So overall, very good experience. From there on, I switched to Uber and I got into the other side of the table, which is purely handling performance marketing. So when I went there, I was handling programmatic, and then slowly I took over other channels as well. And I was doing performance marketing for Uber and Uber Eats and handling brand marketing as well, because Uber back then was transitioning from... this was pre-IPO days. It was slowly transitioning from focusing more on brand as compared to performance, because I think brand needed a standard for an app like Uber, right? It cannot just be purely focused on, performance marketing.
I think you got to have a decent mix of the two, right?
Exactly. Especially for an app like Uber. So you need to stand, because of a lot of issues that used to happen back then, with the brand taking a hit around that time. This was 2017, 2019. But I think that was a great learning phase for me, because again, I went on this side of the table, understood how do you work with the budget, how do you distribute the budget, on what basis do you sort of figure out what partners you need to work. I had a big agency with me who was really helping me out. So that was the first time I started working with an agency who was executing, and I was just doing the strategy.
So a sort of full-on learning experience then, really.
Exactly. It was really interesting, to be very honest. And we were part of the global marketing team as well. So there was a lot of interaction with the EMEA team, LATAM team, US team, and everything else. It was really, again, one of the best learning phases in my life. So that was back at Dubai. And then I sort of switched into gaming again. And I started Product Madness. Again, I was handling DSPs to start with. And then from there on, I sort of switched into a very different role, because I was trying to get an understanding of ad tech and, more towards data. I was trying to lean more towards data, understanding, how attribution works, because I do believe that is the fundamental of how marketing functions, performance marketing functions, not all marketing. Brand has a lot of issues with attribution, so let's not go there. But, performance.
But this, of course, is where we first met. In lots of heated conversations.
We used to have
why is this not working?
A lot of things weren't working, and we used to have a lot of detailed discussion around this. It was really fun, especially your team, our team. We used to have a lot of jamming sessions as well, figuring out, okay, what's happening, what is the data telling us, and what do we sort of without getting into the specific, how do we sort of solve that? And from there on, obviously, there has been a decent growth within the space. And now,
the role that you were doing there, I should probably just explain, is sort of sat as part of the user acquisition team function, but it's kind of a bridge between the products, all of the back end products for the game and everything like that, but also all of the vendors and everything. So you were kind of connecting across everything, trying to work out why nothing was working.
Exactly. I mean, I think I would like to call it more as a problem-solving, role in that sense, because everything was related to tech or attribution. So centralizing, the whole task that was related to the MMP, centralizing the whole task related to the BI tool, centralizing the whole task related to all the partners that required any technical assistance, and obviously internally with the product team and the tech team. I think this role used to sit at the center of it. It was I think it was a role that was created instead of something that was there by default. I sort of worked on it with my managers, and sort of we created that role together.
But it's a hell of a learning role, though, right? Because
it
when
is.
You're deconstructing everything that's going on, and you're seeing numbers and trying to work out why those numbers are showing as the numbers that they are, it's kind of you're digging into how everything functions and the logic behind all of these systems and everything else, which gives you a hell of an intro into what is actually going on when you're seeing the numbers coming through on the user acquisition side.
And that's the part, right? People talk about it in the way of, okay, we have discrepancy, this, that. But I think for you to have an understanding of why the discrepancy exists, how is one system defining a user as compared to the other? How are the events getting tracked within that system? Why exactly, how exactly is spend updated? How exactly is click updated? How exactly is impression updated? Just understand the basics, because I think even right now when I speak with a lot of UA managers across the board, because I go to a lot of conferences, we speak a lot on the podcast and stuff like that. I think sometimes I feel people who are coming in new do lack a certain understanding of the basics. What is a rendered impression? What is a served impression? Have you ever gone through what IAB describes as, what exactly is an impression? What exactly is the click? So just the basics also, I feel sometimes.
Do you think, like, for a normal user acquisition person, sorry, I'm not calling you abnormal, but for a normal user acquisition person, do you think there's an element of they should question all of the numbers that they're seeing? Or, how many rabbit holes is that going to take you down?
I do feel, given the world that we are in, I mean, I call this world basically an inconsistent data world in that sense, especially the current UA situation, right? So the world that we are in is basically completely inconsistent across the board. You have too many layers of data coming in, too many data streams coming in. But my suggestion would definitely be to understand everything in detail, so that you know when to pick out the right number from the wrong number. Or I wouldn't call anything a wrong number, but you should understand how you exactly define and install within your own space. I'm telling you, right, post privacy, the issue is the definition of installed has changed fundamentally, and we'll get into that. I think
I was going to say this is a lovely bridge
yeah,
to where we're going now.
We'll get into that, but yeah, and then sort of now I'm handling a team of 16. I've completely gotten back again into the whole performance marketing media mix, and I got a team of analytics, performance marketeers, and I got a supporting team across the board with PMMs, with whom we do a lot of cross-fund collaboration. So PMMs, TS, creative, obviously we work very closely. But yeah, right now, sort of shifted to this role, which is director of marketing here at Product Madness. So it's been a good learning experience.
Amazing. All right, so let's do it. Let's talk about SKAN. Everybody's desperate to hear about SKAN again. So
again, I thought this was done and dusted. No, no. I think the way we should sort of pick it up is also, let's talk about the practical implications of SKAN. Theoretical part is done, right? I mean, it's been there for a while now.
No. I want to hear. I want to hear. Really, I mean, my first question is: has it physically changed the way that you're doing user acquisition? Like, are you using probabilistic? Are you using SKAN? Are you actually trying to align the two numbers? Do you care? Like what's your take on it?
First of all, I can't physically change anything in UA. It's a digital world. Second of all, look, again, it depends on how different companies are taking it. I'll tell you what my approach is. I'm not saying it's a generalized approach. Everybody should sort of go in that direction. But our understanding as a marketing team over here is to adopt SKAN to the fullest, because I don't see that going anywhere. Right. As much as I have certain issues with the way it's functioning, and especially with the post-install data, and the limitations that it brings through. Now they're calling it crowd anonymity and not privacy threshold, but it is potato. But yeah, overall, I do believe that there is a very fundamental shift that has happened with SKAN coming into the picture, and I'll tell you what it is from a very basic marketing standpoint. Why people want to go for probabilistic still, and why people don't want to go for SKAN. You are targeting devices. You are getting the report or attribution on users, which is something you can't control. For example, when you're targeting your entire bidding algorithm works at a device level, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't suppress if the user was there on the previous device, something like that. It doesn't matter. If the user is coming in on a new device, we're gonna target them. But the reporting is being done on the basis of Apple ID in the SKAN world, which basically is a very stringent identifier, which basically says that, okay, Adam has been the same user for the last 5 years, 6 years. You have the same Apple ID. So basically you're the same user, even though you have changed the device 3 times. And I've spent money 3 times to acquire you, because you always come on the new device. I'm spending money to find you. Although in the reporting, you're coming as a re-download and not as a new user. I think that's the fundamental thing that basically every single marketer has a disconnect with it. We can't control that. You cannot control, because your entire functioning has always been at a device level, right? Probabilistic works for certain folks. It's certain companies. It's mainly because of that, because probabilistic still operates at a basically a device level. You still have some identifier that you try to figure out, but
everything historically has always been device level.
Exactly.
For a lot of mobile gaming companies. Like you want to understand exactly what the users who you target are doing post-install. I mean, that's making that connection.
And which is what I'm saying. I don't disagree. My disagreement starts with, and why I adopted SKAN internally is mainly because of the fact that if it were one centralized, MMP in this case, doing it for all partners, I would have accepted it. What's happening right now is the fragmentation, which I'm uncomfortable with, which basically means that you have certain DSPs that is being, probabilistic attributed by MMPs, fine, but you have all the SRNs doing their own probabilistic attribution. Now, SRNs doing their own probabilistic attribution in my head is a complete black box. It's very difficult for me, and I'm pretty sure a lot of SRNs and self-reporting networks are very good, and I'm pretty sure they're a lot more, transparent in that case. But like, it's very difficult when you own the inventory, when you convert the user, and you do your own reporting.
Yeah, sure. Trust us.
Yeah. So that's where if probabilistic was something that was being done across the board throughout, I might have still considered it.
Yeah.
And the reason for me to consider SKAN is mainly that. it gives me a level playing field. Obviously, there is Apple Search Ads, and I'm not comfortable with that, to be very honest. Obviously, Apple Search Ads being outside of SKAN is something that creates a bit of an issue internally, because again, we have two different data streams and different reporting in that case. But for most of the partners, at least 95 to 99% of the partners,
have you seen ASA working better and scaling better as a consequence?
I mean, look, I think what SKAN does is related to attribution, but what Apple Search Ads does is basically, I think, how search inventory functions. It's the fear of missing out. The scale has nothing to do with anything else except the fear of missing out. And you keep on trying to save your brand keywords, you're spending money. You're trying to attack competitor keywords, you're spending money. You're trying to attack generic keywords, you're spending money, right?
Yeah.
So by increasing the number of possible options or inventory within Apple Search Ads, I think they've done a brilliant job to sort of scale. But again, SKAN is an attribution solution. It was always the case before. Even before, people used to do the same thing. Like, you were targeting the brand keyword and the and generic keyword and the competitor keyword. I think what fundamentally changed is obviously a lot more because the reporting is different and it's not coming under the same purview of SKAN. If it were, I think we'll get the complete picture of how Apple Search Ads competes with our other partners. So that's the drawback of SKAN, which I have an issue with, but we can't do anything about it. But overall, that's where my stand is. With SKAN, what I get is a level playing field. I know across the board which partner is converting at what scale and how many new users the partner is bringing in, because at the end of the day, I know a lot of factors we can't control. But UA, if you're not doing retargeting, you're doing UA, your job is to bring in new users.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So it goes back to that sort of a discussion. And what can we do? I mean, that's why we factor in redownload percentage. We factor in what we have created metric is total cost upon new users coming in from SKAN. So that's our CPI.
And presumably you at Product Madness have a definition of what a new user is, right? It's not literally just an install or an attribution. It's a physical new user to the platform.
Yeah, it's a new user to the platform, but that's what I'm trying to sort of segregate here. Like, one is coming from the partner standpoint. What are we communicating to the partners? What are we working with them? Because that's the ecosystem we work in. Versus what we get internally or what we record internally, which are the internal BI tool and the definition or the data model that we have sort of worked on internally.
So the internal BI that you have when you're looking at SKAN, do you have SKAN in that internal BI, and B, are you able to differentiate between SKAN numbers and probabilistic numbers within your internal BI?
So we have SKAN data in our internal BI. First of all, like, that's what we operate on. That's what our UA managers are operating on. That's the number that we are trying to hit, like 48 hours ROAS and the CPI. Those are the two targets that we have given. Are
you able to tell me where you pull that from?
It's basically coming from a mix of what we get from AppsFlyer, the MMP that we have, in this case, because a lot of SKAN data is coming through the network to them and then to us. And then what we get directly from Apple post iOS 15 plus.
So you are sort of pulling from both both sources.
The reason being that sometimes the partners are sort of trying to block certain information when it's coming through the networks, while in the Apple postback we get it everything candidly. A lot of data like redownload, publisher level data, whatever limited they are available, find course value and stuff like that. So everything we get, and we are sort of tying it back together internally and trying to use whatever we can. For example, I'll give you an example for some of the partners where we don't get the redownload flag. We take the redownload percentage at a channel level from the Apple copy, the postback copy, and we use that logic to split the campaign level redownload data, for example. Okay. So you try and use both the data sets that you have to try and maximize whatever you can in terms of information at a campaign level, at a channel level.
And are you doing any sort of deduping internally?
I mean, these are all in my head.
I don't know whether it matters, actually, to be honest.
Yeah, because they're already being deduped at Apple's end, right? So whatever we're receiving are full-on straight conversions. Unless somebody from the partner side is trying to desperately change the conversion value or something like that, because that's one check that we are doing. Check the number of conversions coming in from the postback versus the postback copy. and just do a high level check. That's something we're doing. But yeah, I mean, I don't think the kind of partners that we work with ever do that. So we are comfortable in that space.
No, fair enough. So do you think with SKAN 4, this is, with the coarse and fine values, is that going to change the way that you're actually working with SKAN? I suppose probably before that, we should talk about how you are working with SKAN currently in terms of the conversion value and that sort of stuff. Are you able to give us a little bit of detail?
Whatever I can, I'd love to share. So, I mean, essentially, we are working with mostly revenue buckets on the conversion schema side. The reason being that obviously we are an IP-driven company. That's what we want to track, and that's
have you tried anything else other than revenue buckets? And ultimately, revenue is what you're looking for, right? I mean,
no. So, to be very honest, because it's been a journey of 2.5, 3 years, and I've been handling it since the start. We have tried multiple things before finalizing and saying that, okay, we're going to go ahead with revenue buckets. We have tried events, we have tried predictions within SKAN. We have tried a mix of events and revenue together at the cost of reducing the number of
some sort of
values.
Propensity to pay model that you can. Yeah, okay.
We were the first ones to push for, I don't want to do it 24 hours, I want to do 48 hours, even before SKAN 4.0.
Yeah.
So we have been trying, we did a lot of analysis internally, 24, 48, 72 hours, what goes well. This was like 2 years ago when people were not even thinking about this.
But did anything make any difference at all, in comparison to revenue buckets, or?
No. So the thing is, ultimately, revenue buckets are working from a partner standpoint as well, because there are a lot of partners who are actually looking at that data and trying to optimize.
It's the most important metric, really.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I think it's also about having a clear-cut communication. The reason not to go for probabilistic is also because of the fact that I don't think it's consistent across the board, right? As I said. So what happens with SKAN is I can be very clear about saying, I want you to hit a cost per new user install of this much. I want you to hit a UA ROAS of this much. I want to keep a redownload rate around this number, whatever that is, right? Because I'm tracking that number as well. So it gives me a very direct, confident, conversation with the partners. The other thing that we're tracking internally, I think this will be very important for the listeners as well, is something that we're trying to build based on the opt-in data, which our data science team has built internally. It combines the opt-in and opt-out data to to model D30 ROAS, essentially.
Okay.
But it's highly, even within the model, they only say that it's a bit influenced by opt-in users. Obviously, if you have higher opt-in users, the confidence in the model goes up for sure. But I think it's a very good indicative data that we track. And we see that with some partners who are doing very well in the first 48 hours and actually dying out, in the long run. So that's a very good data point to sort of have. Yeah. So that's also we do. So we have, for example, from a KPI standpoint, we have 48 hours ROAS target. We have cost per new user install target. And then obviously internally we check D30 ROAS and D7 ROAS and how exactly that's functioning based on the model that our data science team has built.
Very cool. And do you think are you switching to the coarse and fine values or
we did.
Does it not make enough difference?
Look, again, you have to maximize with whatever options are being provided to you. So obviously we have moved as soon as SKAN 4.0 was launched. SKAN has been something I can proudly say as a company we've been able to adopt very quickly across the board. Something that we pushed for even with coarse and fine value, and we literally started doing it the day it was announced. We started doing our own analysis and figuring out what do we want to do and stuff like that. In the first 48 hours that we are tracking, still we are very much reliant on fine value. Coarse value is something that we don't track that much. But in the next two windows, which is 3 to 7 days and 8 to 35 days, we definitely are tracking, the values that we are getting, high, medium, low. And again, I want to be absolutely clear. We're looking at this as an indicative data and not as an absolute data.
Yeah.
The window 2 and window 3. But it does give you certain, it can create certain hypotheses. For example, if you have two partners,
but would you use that in order to be able to scale a specific campaign more, or?
You can. So again, that's the example I was coming.
No, but I mean, your confidence in that data, is that enough to enable you to scale more?
So I'll tell you how I'll handle it. For example, if I have two partners, right, and I'm seeing three, because first of all, let's start with how we have sort of created the revenue. Again, we have created a revenue bucket in window 2 and window 3 based on the payment pattern among those users who are active between 3 to 7 days and 8 to 35 days. So we've been very specific about those windows. We're trying to see what should be the range of the revenue bucket, because we're treating them as 3 conversion values in window 2 and 3 conversion values in window 3, essentially. That's how we're treating it as.
And this is the best that you've got to with from testing all the way along, right?
Exactly. We've been testing it for the last 6 months. Obviously, we've reached here in that case. But even within this space, what we are doing is, if you're partner 1, partner 2, and you get whatever, high, medium, low value that you get on partner 1. So let's say you got 5 high, 2 medium versus 5 medium, 2 high, right? Partner 1, partner 2. Now, the revenue bucket. You can multiply it, you can get the exact revenue. Now, let's say partner 1 is making more revenue than partner 2 in window 2 and window 3. At some level that the users who are converting from partner 1 is doing much better job in terms of long-term monetization. It's an indicative data. Now, you couple that information with what we are doing through opt-in data and the model that we have built, where we are getting D30 ROAS, right? So if I'm seeing that across both the data sources, again, both of them are indicative data for us, then you can confidently say, yes, it makes sense. I think we should continue to invest. Because what's happening also is, I think a lot of companies are not realizing the potential of opt-in data that you guys have, because at the end of the day, again, it won't be accurate, but it gives you certain information about how the long-term looks like.
Indicator, yeah.
It's an indicator, because you can't do everything with 48 hours. We tried it, and
definitely not.
We realized that some partners are just not. Some partners are doing badly in 48 hours, doing very well in the long term. Some partners are doing very good in 48 hours, and it's drying up in the long term. So, it's a mix of both. You got to have, again, all of these are indicative data, but I do believe these help us to understand what we're looking for.
So, though, you've outlined what you're doing as your structure, but you can't take that one-to-one to different companies, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to go through like a testing phase to try and understand. So I'm really interested to know what your advice for anyone sort of starting to work with SKAN on a new game, for instance. How would you approach that? How do you even sort of start?
I mean, for a new game, it's extremely difficult. I'll be very honest. So I think whatever I've spoken about is obviously for a game who has been in the market for a while. It becomes very easy in that case. For a new game, again, it's about doing rigorous testing.
But also, would you say, sorry to interrupt, you're used to me, so you know this.
Yeah. I was waiting why you're not interrupting more.
But yes. in terms of we said about a new game, but if that's a small company versus a large company releasing a new game, is that different still?
It is different, in my opinion. What happens is the large company typically have a lot of data historically, unless they're trying to go into a completely new genre. They know what works and what doesn't, right?
No, so but let's say it is a new genre. Let's say there's a startup creating a game and a large company creating a game. Do they use the same methodology, or is there a difference there?
There are differences. So when a startup is doing it, my suggestion would be to not get into SKAN directly. To be very honest,
what just work with probabilistic?
Not just probabilistic. I mean, start, because you're limiting the number of partners. You're not working with 20 partners when you're starting out. You're working with 1 or 2. You have to trust the numbers that they're doing. And initially, at the start, paid is what drives everything. You don't have a lot of organic coming in. So more or less, the data, whatever the platform is showing, there could be some discrepancy, but it's not completely wild off. For example, if you're running only on Google, and that's the only channel that you have, it's fine. It doesn't matter what you're getting, whatever data you're getting on the dashboard. It's good enough to start.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So that's why I would say that it becomes a concern, again, as I keep on talking about the consistency across the board. If you're working with 10 partners, I think SKAN is your way to go. If you're working with less number of partners, maybe not. Because you're not searching for consistency. You're searching for volume at that stage. You're searching for quality at that stage. You care more about targeting and less about attribution. That's something that I want listeners to understand, that SKAN is an attribution solution. It doesn't change how targeting functions.
Yes.
That's changed by ATT, which is a very different ballgame altogether. So that's very important to understand, that whatever attribution you're comfortable with. I'm not completely against probabilistic. As I said, if some companies are taking it with a pinch of salt, it's fine. I gave you my rationale to not go ahead, but definitely if you guys are okay with going ahead, it's fine. Because within our space as well, as I said, Apple Search Ads has a different data stream, so it does come at a cost, in that sense. But yeah, I mean, my suggestion would be not to get bogged down with SKAN when you're a startup. And if you are a large company getting into a new genre, my suggestion would be take the learning that you have from different apps. And if unless it's completely different as compared to you going from an IAP world to an IAM world, which is a very different world. Obviously, I think that in that case, do rigorous testing because you'll have budget. If you're a big company,
is
you'll
this
have
something
budget.
now that for startups or indeed for larger companies like yourself? Is this something that you actually look for when recruiting now, like people with an understanding of SKAN and because it's become such a big part of user acquisition?
I mean, I would say no, exactly. And I'll tell you why. I mean, people should, I mean, obviously, humanists should be aware who are coming in. But if they don't have the full understanding of it, I'm okay with that. The reason being, I think I'm more looking forward to people who want to learn. So if they're willing to, even if they don't have knowledge and they're willing to learn, I'm okay with the
Yeah,
person
sure.
coming in, taking 3
Personality
months.
type, sort of wanting to dig
Yeah,
into things and
exactly.
asking why. Yeah,
Because
yeah,
you
yeah,
need
yeah,
to
for
dig
sure.
into this. Because what happened, I think it's very important for you to understand. Again, this is different per company. Not every company is going that big on SKAN, right? So it depends. But for us, yeah, it makes sense because I would want the person to sort of understand what SKAN is, get deep into it, understand and ask as many questions as possible, understand what we're trying to achieve with this. So it becomes a bit important in that sense, and not that you don't have a knowledge and then I'm not going to go ahead with that. That's not the way. Yeah.
Okay. And lastly, on the privacy front, what do you think about Privacy Sandbox? Is it going to be another SKAN, or is it going to be delivered in a different way?
Look, whatever I'm going to say right now is speculative. Whatever I'm hearing
Well, of
from the
course, it doesn't
industry,
exist at the moment.
it doesn't exist. It does exist. I mean,
Yeah, that's not
they rolled
strictly
it out
true.
to some devices and stuff. But look, Privacy Sandbox is a very large term. Within that, I think what affects us is the attribution part, essentially, right? And if you talk about how exactly that's going to come, unless GAID goes away, which Google has said that it should, but they have not put a fixed timeline to that, I don't see any issue happening because the adoption, you already have an opt out, for example, in Android devices, and that has been going up. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of number, it's gone up from 5 to 10% of the last 3-4 years because of the awareness of privacy in people's mind, right? But it's still not as high as Apple used to be during LAT days. So right now, from an attribution standpoint, you're still doing okay. It's not that big a deal. But I don't think, first of all, Privacy Sandbox would be as big a tectonic shift as SKAN was. Because as we are all aware, Google is working with everybody. But having spoken with a lot of,
we can see that from now. From the very concept of it, they've been working with MMPs, they've been working with the larger gaming companies like yourselves to really try and make it as smooth as possible entering the market.
It is, and because I've spoken with a lot of product teams across Google, across MMPs, across different advertisers as well, and we're trying to understand what their take has been. I think where Google started was a very noble cause, which is try to have an open source attribution solution, essentially.
Yeah.
But there's still certain nuances that have not been solved as of now, and I think they are on top of it. So I hope they are able to sort of get away, because again, the fundamental difference, based on my understanding at least, I think they're still going to focus on device level. And that is, again, as I said, as I started with the whole discussion on SKAN, I think that still is a big thing, because again,
but do
Apple
you think,
was not a...
Hang on, if you take a step back for a minute, do you think that the overarching theme of all of this is that companies should move away from device level now? Or is there no way that companies can move away from device level?
All I'm trying to say is the fundamental understanding of what a CPI used to be needs to evolve. What an install is needs to evolve.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I'm saying, because every single company would have, the definition. Every single company would have a different definition within their own space, right? If you're keeping it at a device level, you're going to go for probabilistic. If you're going for a user level, you're going to go for SKAN. The thing is, the problem always becomes that whenever I'm speaking with your managers, I mean, across the board, they always keep on, okay, here's a great idea, but I can't control that. I cannot find completely new users within that space. And I get that. I completely get that. But what I'm trying to do is a more top-down approach. Because when I know certain partners are driving me more new users versus certain partners driving me less new users, and I know my re-download remains the same, irrespective, right? I would invest more on those partners. I'm taking a top-down approach. I don't think it's a very practical approach when it comes to campaign optimization per se.
Yeah.
It becomes very difficult to put that because
but that depends on the targeting. That depends on what your goals are out of running the user acquisition in the first place.
Exactly, because targeting, as far as I know, they're not using SKAN at all from a targeting standpoint. The partners, they're using it on the reporting side, but they're not using it on the targeting side. It's still based on user level data, which is where the disconnect is, because targeting is based on device level and the reporting is based on user level, and that's why the disconnect. But I mean, going back to the privacy sandbox question for a minute, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think my understanding is it's going to be at a device level, and I think that's why it won't be that big a shift in the approach, because it goes back to the fundamentals. Apple is a hardware company, that they were building. They were not into advertising space, so they made changes based on privacy first approach. Google is 80% of their revenue, 90% of the revenue is coming from advertising.
Yeah.
So their approach would be privacy first, advertising first policy.
They're very different perspectives. That's
exactly.
For sure. Yeah.
So they would always take that perspective, because they also know their targeting is at a device level. They would want reporting at a device level. Now, within that, a lot of things would change. Obviously, the identifiers would go away. The referrer ID might stay, but within referrer ID, there are still a lot of issues. And I don't know what's going to happen with the governments trying to make changes like the DMA over here, and then California is also coming up with something similar. UK came up with something similar.
Do you think there'll be more initiatives like DMA coming in from different countries and geos, and really sort of starting to clamp down a lot more?
Look, I might be the wrong person to answer this, but given the trend that has always happened, something starts in Europe, it ends across the world. So you saw that with
CCPA
and GDPR and
GDPR.
It will sort of happen, I think, and let's see how this opens up, because there is an effort going on across the board in trying to bring trying to keep.
But does that mean once you get rid of all device information, does it come down to is the future things like MMM and that kind of thing, or can you not actually run performance marketing with something like MMM?
Look, MMM is going to help you in figuring out the budget part. Performance marketing is a lot more than that. So for me, MMM is basically, again, some sort of indicative data when it comes to budget making decisions across the board. But it has to factor in what you call a user. And that's what something I feel it lacks sometimes, because it's a very generic solution out there. Again, I'm not talking about individual companies. I'm pretty sure some companies would have been doing it much better. But my understanding, it does help. And we do, even internally, we're not calling it MMM, but we do keep a track of which partners are doing much better in the long run with the short run. And, how do we allocate the budget based on that and stuff like that. So we are already doing it, and how exactly, after what certain amount of budget that you're spending, the incremental return starts to go down, and stuff like that. So we're trying to keep everything and trying to create something. I wouldn't call it triple M. I wouldn't call it, incrementality or anything like that, but something of that sort in between, which is more practical when it comes to budget making decisions.
Yeah. A merging of all of it to suit your needs. Yeah,
exactly.
Makes complete sense.
And that's something I think it can only be done by an internal team as compared to external. It becomes very difficult in that sense.
Right. I want to finish with a couple of slightly different questions, because we've got a lot of...
privacy is done?
Privacy's done. Privacy's finished. So we got a lot of...
That's the soundbite for this.
Privacy's finished. That's what a title. So we've got a lot of user acquisition people, some new to the industry, some veterans like yourself.
Sure, yeah. Legend.
I'm intrigued. What do you wish you had known earlier now? Like, sort of from when you started in user acquisition and stuff, is there things that you now know that you wish you could go back in time and tell yourself?
I mean, honestly, the only thing it would sound like a very philosophical.
See you thinking.
Yeah, for a while. I don't think about privacy. I think about these stuff. But no, I think the only thing that I'll say, and this is an advice that I got from a lot of other folks who've been there for a while, which is, look, there's nothing that you can learn because the industry keeps on shifting. So you have to be resilient and you have to be proactive in trying to understand what is changing. I think that's the most important thing I'll say. Because whenever a change happens, I think a lot of people push back this, that, we don't want to adopt this. We don't want to. It takes certain time to get your head behind it. And again, in a world of fragmented data, having the ability to go through all of it and actually figure out what your KPIs are, what are you optimizing towards, and stuff like that. Like overall, I think that becomes very important. So just having the resilience and the proactiveness to be on top of whatever is changing
Adaptability.
across. I think that was the word that I was missing. I used all the other words like resilience, but adaptability, yes, being adaptable.
I like it. I think actually thinking about it and thinking about what you said, I'd probably throw in question everything as well. Like I think for me, that's been a big part of user acquisition is, question everything that you're seeing. If something looks
That's
too good
why
to be
you
true,
work at
it
an
probably
MMP and
is.
I work at at an advertising company in a social casino space, and I'm handling marketing. That's the difference. No, but you're right. Jokes apart, you're absolutely right that we need to sort of be absolutely clear and ask as many questions as possible, because nothing is the gospel truth in that sense. Everything has pros and cons, and it's up to you what you choose, essentially. So just keep on questioning, be adaptable.
Amazing. And let's finish up with where do you find knowledge? What sources do you go to that give you all of the latest stuff that you're looking at here? I mean, you have an exceptional knowledge of SKAN. Like where did you get this from?
Look, I mean, I'll be very honest. I think a lot of people are looking for places to go and learn and stuff like that. I personally, that has not worked for me, and it's a very personal take. I think a lot of people actually go and read, and it really helps them. I think for me, it's more about discussing with as many players in the ecosystem as possible. I go to the conferences for that reason. I think I like, out of the 100 people that you meet, I think 80 are still, it's about sales pitches and, having just a normal conversation. But I think 20 are genuine, honest conversation about where they are, what we are, what they are thinking, what we are thinking. Are we doing anything different? That helps. And I keep on reading, obviously, from just Google search and whatever top pages appear. I think AppsFlyer help page is pretty good. In my opinion, I think it gets updated regularly. I had to do an AppsFlyer pitch because Adam forced me. But, no, but any MMP, thank you. Any MMP help page, I think, is pretty good because they are the center of it. They need, from a data standpoint, they need to keep on updating what data sources are changing and stuff like that. I think that becomes very important. That really helped me, to be very honest, across the board. And obviously, the developer page of Google and Apple, whatever updates that keep on happening from an attribution standpoint, you should keep on reading. But yeah, it's more about talking to the right set of people, finding the right set of people, talking to them, and understanding from different, like I try and speak with partners, I try and speak with MMPs, I try and speak with different advertisers, I try and speak with the exchanges, I try and speak with the SSPs as well, as much information as I can gather. I try my best to get my head around, and literally my partners sometimes hate me for it, because my partners are like, why do you want to talk to the product team? But I try my best to get in room with the product team, how they are working, how they are functioning. I think all of these things really help.
And conferences are the best place that you've found to be able to make those connections and sort of start those conversations.
But it's also about having to make that connection, and also having individual, reaching out, having conversations. It's not just you walk up a conversation at a conference and that's going to be it. No, you have to again keep on indulging, talking to them, see where their head is at, where they're coming from, and having an honest conversation about these things. I think it really helps.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
We didn't laugh for 45
minutes, Adam. It's been an absolute pleasure to host you on this podcast. And you are indeed a legend of UA.
Wow, finally. Thank you. No, but it's a bit weird for us. We do podcasts as co-hosts, and right now you're the host and I'm the guest. It's a very different equation, but I'm glad we were able to go through it without making fun of each other for long. I think you are an MMP legend. So you should be. I had to give compliments again. Adam forced me, but no, I really enjoyed this. I think some good things came out of it. Some actual practical, important things as well. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you so much.